The grand ballroom shimmered with golden lights as Oliver Kingsley stepped inside, his presence demanding attention. On his arm was a woman so breathtaking that conversations halted mid-sentence. His ex-fiancée, Victoria Lancaster, froze, gripping her champagne flute tighter. She had left Oliver when he was nothing, just a struggling man with dreams too big for his empty pockets. She chose wealth over love, walking away without a second thought. But tonight, he was the billionaire. And the woman beside him, the one making Victoria's heart race with jealousy, his maid Charlotte. Only Victoria didn't know that. And what Oliver didn't know was that tonight, revenge would turn into something much deeper. Oliver led Charlotte through the crowd, his grip on her waist firm. He had prepared for this moment for years. He wanted Victoria to see him now, powerful, untouchable, standing beside a woman so stunning that she'd regret ever letting him go. But Charlotte wasn't playing a role. She wasn't just a pawn in his game. She was real, her presence soothing in a way Oliver hadn't anticipated. "You don't have to do this," Charlotte whispered, her voice laced with nerves. Oliver smirked, leaning in just enough for Victoria to see. "Just enjoy the party, Charlotte." Charlotte swallowed. She had worked for Oliver as a maid for nearly a year, watching him build his empire with ruthless determination. But tonight, standing beside him in an elegant dress he had personally chosen, she felt different. She felt claimed. And that terrified her. From across the room, Victoria approached with slow, calculated steps. Her green eyes scanned Charlotte from head to toe before settling on Oliver. "Oliver!" Victoria's voice was smooth, forced. "You didn't tell me you were engaged." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. Oliver smirked, tilting his head. "Did I need to?" Victoria's lips parted slightly. She was caught off guard. That was exactly what he wanted. But as Oliver looked at Charlotte, at the way she avoided his gaze, at the nervous way she clenched her fingers, something inside him shifted. This was just supposed to be a game. A way to make Victoria regret. So why did he suddenly feel like he was the one about to lose? Charlotte's breath hitched at Victoria's words. Engaged. She wanted to correct her, to explain that she was just a maid caught in a situation she didn't belong in. But before she could open her mouth, Oliver's fingers lightly tightened on her waist. "No," he said smoothly, his voice carrying the effortless confidence of a man in control. "We're not engaged." Victoria's smirk flickered, triumph flashing in her eyes, until Oliver continued. "Yet." A gasp escaped Charlotte's lips. A murmur spread across the nearby guests. Victoria's grip on her champagne flute tightened, her nails digging into the glass. Charlotte turned to Oliver in shock, but his face remained unreadable. He was playing a game, a dangerous one, and she was his chosen piece. Victoria forced a smile. "You move on fast, Oliver." Oliver chuckled, tilting his head slightly. "I had no choice, did I?" His eyes locked onto hers, the weight of old betrayals filling the space between them. Victoria's gaze flickered to Charlotte again, scanning her from head to toe with thinly veiled jealousy. "And what do you do, dear? A model? An actress?" Charlotte opened her mouth, but Oliver beat her to it. "She's someone you could never be, Victoria." Silence fell. A few nearby guests pretended not to eavesdrop. Victoria's face turned pale before flushing red. Charlotte swallowed hard. She had spent years in Oliver's mansion, working quietly in the background, never expecting to be in the spotlight, especially not like this. "I need some air," Charlotte whispered, stepping back. But Oliver caught her hand, holding it firmly. "We're not done," he murmured, his voice low and unreadable. His words sent a shiver down her spine, though she wasn't sure if it was fear or something far more dangerous. She wanted to protest, to remind him that she wasn't like these people, that she didn't belong in his world of wealth, power, and revenge. But when she met his gaze, something in his eyes softened, just for a second. Then it was gone. Victoria scoffed. "Well, Oliver, I hope you're happy with your new choice." "I am," he said simply. Charlotte felt her heart hammer in her chest. Why did that sound so real? Just then a deep voice interrupted. Well, well. Oliver Kingsley finally returns. A tall man in a crisp navy blue suit stepped forward, smirking. His sharp jaw and piercing gray eyes made the tension in the room sharpen. Charlotte didn't recognize him, but Oliver's jaw clenched. Victoria turned, her lips curling. "Oh, darling, have you two met? My fiancé, Ethan Montgomery." The world seemed to slow. Charlotte felt Oliver's grip on her tighten just slightly. And in that moment she realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about revenge. Oliver still had unfinished business. And Charlotte was now caught right in the middle of it. A sharp silence fell over the ballroom as Ethan Montgomery stepped forward. His smirk widening. Charlotte could feel the tension in the air shift. Thicker, heavier. She had no idea who this man was, but the way Oliver stiffened beside her made her stomach twist. Oliver turned slowly, his blue eyes darkening as he met Ethan's gaze. The air between them crackled like an unseen battle was already taking place. Victoria's voice dripped with satisfaction. "Oh, darling, have you two met? My fiancé, Ethan Montgomery." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. Victoria's fiancé. The man she left Oliver for. She felt Oliver's fingers flex slightly on her waist before he forced his grip to relax. His expression remained unreadable, but Charlotte had worked for him long enough to recognize the way his jaw clenched when he was holding back rage. "Of course we've met." Oliver's voice was smooth, but there was an unmistakable edge beneath it. Ethan chuckled, tucking his hands into his pockets. "It's been a while, Kingsley. Last time I saw you. Well, you weren't exactly standing in my league, were you?" Charlotte felt Oliver's body shift, his muscles coiling like a predator ready to strike. But he didn't react, not in the way Ethan clearly wanted. Instead, Oliver smirked. "And yet here we are," Oliver said, his tone casual but cutting. "Looks like I've upgraded." His hand slid lower on Charlotte's waist, his grip now possessive, claiming her in front of everyone. Charlotte's breath hitched. Victoria's face darkened. Ethan let out a low laugh, his gray eyes flicking to Charlotte, studying her with slow, deliberate interest. "And who's this?" Ethan asked, stepping closer. "A new investment. Or?" His gaze swept over her in a way that made Charlotte's skin crawl. "Something more personal." Charlotte's hands clenched at her sides. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not between powerful men throwing silent daggers at each other. Oliver's voice turned ice cold. "Careful, Montgomery." Ethan raised his hands in mock surrender. "Relax. I'm just admiring your taste." He tilted his head, eyes gleaming with amusement. "I have to admit, she's quite the upgrade from." Victoria slammed her champagne glass onto the tray of a passing waiter, the sharp sound cutting through the tension. "That's enough," she snapped, her voice tight. "We don't need a scene at my engagement party." Oliver chuckled darkly, pulling Charlotte even closer. "Oh, Victoria, I think a scene is exactly what you wanted." Charlotte could feel Victoria's fury vibrating through the air. She wanted to disappear, but Oliver's firm hold on her waist made it clear. He wasn't letting her go. Victoria straightened, forcing a smile. "Well, enjoy the party, Oliver. I suppose we both got what we wanted in the end." Ethan smirked, sliding an arm around Victoria's waist. But as he did, his gray eyes lingered on Charlotte just a little too long. Charlotte shivered. Something about him felt dangerous. The moment Victoria and Ethan moved away, Charlotte finally exhaled. "What was that?" she whispered, turning to Oliver. "You didn't tell me Victoria's fiancé was." "A snake," Oliver finished, his voice tight. Charlotte frowned. "No, I was going to say, someone who clearly knows how to push your buttons." Oliver's lips twitched. "I don't have buttons." Charlotte arched a brow. "Really?" Because from where I was standing, it looked like he was winning that little exchange. Oliver's smirk vanished. He leaned down, so close that Charlotte could feel his breath against her ear. Winning. His voice was dangerously low. Trust me, Charlotte. I never lose. Charlotte swallowed, her pulse racing. She wasn't sure if Oliver was still talking about Ethan, or if this was now about something else entirely. Before she could respond, a waiter approached them with a silver tray. On it lay a single folded note. Mr. Kingsley, the waiter said, bowing slightly. A private message for you. Oliver took the note, his expression unreadable as he unfolded it. Charlotte saw his eyes flicker with something she had never seen before, real tension. Then, without a word, Oliver grabbed Charlotte's hand. We're leaving, he said sharply. Charlotte blinked. What? Why? Oliver didn't answer. He simply pulled her through the ballroom, past the guests, past Victoria's smug gaze, and out into the cold night. Charlotte had no idea what was written on that note. But whatever it was, had changed everything. The cold night air hit Charlotte's skin like a slap as Oliver pulled her outside. The grand ballroom, with its golden chandeliers and judgmental eyes, was now just a distant hum behind them. Charlotte tried to keep up with his long strides, but her heels wobbled on the stone pavement. Oliver, slow down, she finally snapped, wrenching her wrist free from his grip. What the hell is going on? Oliver stopped abruptly. He exhaled sharply, his breath visible in the cold night air. The tension in his shoulders hadn't eased, his jaw still tight. She had seen Oliver angry before, annoyed, ruthless, but this was different. Charlotte's eyes flicked to the note still crumpled in his fist. What did it say? She asked, her voice softer now. For a moment Oliver said nothing. His grip on the paper tightened and then, slowly, he handed it to her. Charlotte's fingers trembled as she unfolded the small note. Some things can't be buried, Kingsley. Watch your back. E.M. Her stomach dropped. Ethan Montgomery, she whispered. Oliver let out a dry chuckle, but there was no humor in it. He always did have a flair for the dramatic. Charlotte swallowed hard. What does he mean? What things? Oliver's blue eyes darkened as he stepped closer, his towering frame making her feel impossibly small. His voice was low, almost a whisper. There are things about my past, Charlotte, things you don't know. Her heartbeat quickened. Oliver had always been a mystery, a man who built his empire from the ground up after being discarded like trash. She had always wondered what it took for him to rise from nothing. Now, she wasn't sure if she wanted the answer. Before she could ask anything else, the doors behind them swung open. Charlotte turned just in time to see Victoria stepping outside, her expression unreadable. Oliver stiffened beside her. For a moment there was only silence. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. Then Victoria crossed her arms, tilting her chin up. I need to talk to you, Oliver. Alone. Charlotte's pulse quickened. Well, she wasn't sure why the thought of them talking alone bothered her so much. Maybe it was the way Victoria looked at him, or the way Oliver's fingers twitched at his side. But before Oliver could answer, Charlotte took a deep breath and did something she never thought she'd do. She stepped closer to him, slipping her hand into his. Oliver's head snapped toward her, but she kept her eyes on Victoria. If you have something to say, Charlotte said, her voice steady, you can say it in front of me. Victoria's green eyes flashed with something dangerous. A slow, cold smirk spread across her lips. Oh, sweetheart, she purred. You really think this concerns you? Oliver squeezed Charlotte's hand, but he didn't let go. And for the first time that night, she wasn't sure if he was protecting her, or if he needed her protection. The tension between the three of them was so thick, it felt like the cold air had turned to stone. The soft hum of the ballroom music was distant now, drowned by the silent war playing out between Oliver, Charlotte, and Victoria. Charlotte's heart pounded as she tightened her grip on Oliver's hand, a silent message that she wasn't going to step back. Not this time. Victoria arched a perfect brow, her green eyes flashing with amusement and something darker. She took a slow step forward, her heels clicking against the stone pavement. "Oh, sweetheart," she said smoothly, tilting her head. "You really think this concerns you?" Charlotte swallowed hard but held her ground. Oliver, who had been silent this entire time, finally exhaled, his fingers loosening slightly around Charlotte's hand. "This isn't the time, Victoria," he said, his voice low and edged with warning. But Victoria wasn't backing down. She lifted a manicured hand and reached for Oliver's tie, straightening it slightly, an intimate act that made Charlotte's stomach twist. Oliver caught her wrist before she could pull away. "That's enough." His voice was quiet, but there was a dangerous undertone beneath it. Victoria smirked, her fingers curling as she looked between them. "It's cute," she said, eyes settling on Charlotte. "That you think holding his hand means something. That you think he's yours." Charlotte felt Oliver's muscles tense beside her. Victoria leaned in just slightly, her voice dropping. "But you and I both know what he really is," she whispered, just loud enough for Charlotte to hear. "And when you find out, let's see if you still want to hold his hand then." Charlotte's blood ran cold. "What the hell are you talking about?" Oliver snapped, stepping forward. Victoria smiled, satisfied that she had placed doubt exactly where she wanted it. She pulled her wrist free and brushed imaginary dust off her dress. "I think you already know, Oliver," she said lightly. Then she turned, her silk gown flowing like liquid gold behind her as she walked back inside. Charlotte stood frozen. Her hand was still in Oliver's, but suddenly, it didn't feel so secure anymore. Charlotte turned to him. "What did she mean?" she asked quietly. Oliver's jaw ticked. "Nothing." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. And Charlotte could feel it. From the ballroom, Ethan Montgomery watched everything unfold. A smirk tugged at his lips as he took a sip of champagne. His sharp gray eyes focused on Charlotte. "Oh, Charlotte," he murmured to himself. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." The grand Kingsley estate was glowing with golden lights, its vast gardens adorned with white roses and shimmering chandeliers. Tonight was not a night of business, power, or revenge. Tonight was the night Oliver Kingsley married Charlotte. The woman who had been nothing but a maid in his mansion. The woman who had unknowingly healed every broken part of him. The woman who now stood at the end of the aisle, wearing a dress that made her look like a dream he never wanted to wake up from. As Charlotte walked towards him, her soft curls cascading down her back, her white gown hugging her delicate frame, Oliver felt something he never had before. Pure, unshakable peace. She wasn't just his bride. She was his. And nothing in this world would ever take her away from him. A ceremony sealed with love. Charlotte stood before Oliver, her hazel eyes wide with emotion. She had never imagined this moment, not in her wildest dreams. The man who had once been her cold and untouchable employer was now the man placing a diamond ring on her finger. His touch soft yet possessive. His voice was deep and full of promise as he said the words. "With this ring, I claim you as mine. Not as a maid. Not as someone beneath me. But as my wife. My equal. My everything." A tear slipped down Charlotte's cheek, and Oliver, ever so gentle, reached up to brush it away with his thumb. "Say it, sweetheart," he murmured. "Say you're mine." Charlotte's lips trembled, but her voice was steady. "I'm yours, Oliver. Always." And the moment the priest declared them husband and wife, Oliver wasted no time. He pulled her into his arms, his lips crashing onto hers with an intensity that left her breathless. The world around them disappeared, the applause, the music. Nothing mattered except this kiss. His hands curled around her waist, holding her as if letting go was never an option. And when he finally pulled back, his blue eyes burned into hers with an unspoken vow. "You'll never belong to anyone else," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Not in this lifetime. Not in the next." The wedding night, a love that consumed. The night was warm, the air filled with the scent of roses and candlelight. Inside their honeymoon suite, Charlotte stood by the window, still overwhelmed by the reality of everything. She was married to Oliver. But before she could process it further, she felt him. A warmth behind her. A presence so strong, so intoxicating, she didn't have to turn around to know it was him. Thinking about running, sweetheart? Oliver's voice was a low, teasing growl as he wrapped his arms around her from behind, his breath tickling her ear. Charlotte smiled, leaning into him. And leave my husband all alone on our wedding night. Oliver chuckled, his fingers brushing the straps of her dress, his lips pressing against her bare shoulder. Good, he murmured. Because I don't intend to let you go. He turned her gently, cupping her face, his blue eyes dark with something deeper than desire, something soul-binding. You changed everything, Charlotte, he admitted, his thumb stroking her cheek. You made me feel things I never thought I could. And now? He exhaled sharply, his forehead resting against hers. I can't exist without you. Charlotte's heart swelled with love, her fingers tracing the strong lines of his face. Then don't, she whispered. Just love me, Oliver. The way I love you. And he did. Oliver claimed her lips, slow but deep, pouring every ounce of his devotion into the kiss. His hands were firm on her waist, pulling her closer, as if trying to merge their souls into one. Every touch, every caress was a silent promise. She was his. Forever. A love that was never meant to end. As the night melted into dawn, Oliver lay beside Charlotte, his fingers lazily tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. She was asleep, curled into him, her breathing soft and even. He watched her for a long moment, taking in every detail, the way her lashes fluttered slightly, the way her lips parted as she dreamed. And as he held her closer, pressing a lingering kiss to her forehead, one thought settled deep in his heart. She wasn't just his wife. She was his forever. And nothing, not the past, not the world, not even fate itself, would ever take her away from him.